My name is Jack. At 55, I find myself in a bustling city, working as a senior executive in a multinational corporation. My life has been a whirlwind of board meetings, strategic planning, and navigating the complexities of corporate politics. But beneath the polished exterior of my professional life lies a personal story that's been quietly unraveling. I've been married to Emma for 20 years. Emma, 50, is a dedicated woman, passionate about her work at a nonprofit organization. Together, we've raised 5 incredible children who are now carving their own paths in life. Our home has always been filled with the chaos and joy that comes with a large family. Yet amid the laughter and the noise, there's been a growing silence between Emma and me. We've both been incredibly busy, and the demands of our careers and parenting have left little room for us to connect as a couple. I've tried to bridge the gap, suggesting date nights and weekend getaways, but Emma always seemed too preoccupied or too tired. It was as if she was there, but her mind was always somewhere else. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong, but I brushed it off, telling myself that it was just a phase. The distance between Emma and me grew more palpable with each passing day. She started spending more time away from home, often coming up with reasons that seemed plausible at first. Late-night work meetings, catching up with friends, or simply needing time to herself. But there was a pattern to her absences that I couldn't ignore. She'd leave after dinner and come back late, sometimes well past midnight. One evening, as I sat in our living room surrounded by the remnants of our children VDJTM's day, toys, books, and half-finished homework, I realized how much I missed the companionship that once defined our marriage. I missed the way we used to talk about everything from mundane daily events to our dreams for the future. Now our conversations had dwindled to logistical discussions about the kids or household chores. The tipping point came when Emma started being secretive with her phone. She would quickly turn it off or put it away whenever I entered the room. One night, curiosity got the better of me. While Emma was in the shower, I glanced at her phone, but it was locked. She had changed her password, something she had never done before. That small act of secrecy was like a punch to the gut. I couldn't ignore the red flags any longer. It felt like there was an invisible wall between us, and every effort I made to breach it was met with cold indifference. The woman I had loved and shared my life with for 2 decades seemed to be slipping away, and I was left standing on the other side, grasping at shadows. As the days turned into weeks, my suspicions grew. Emma's absences became more frequent, and her explanations increasingly vague. I couldn't help but notice that she often mentioned a new colleague from work, Tom. Tom was charming and successful, the kind of man who could easily turn heads. I tried to brush it off, convincing myself that it was just a professional relationship. But deep down, I knew something was off. One evening, Emma mentioned that she and Tom were working on a significant project together. She spoke about him with an enthusiasm I hadn't seen in years. Her eyes lit up, and her smile was genuine, but it wasn't directed at me. It was like she was a different person when she talked about him. I wanted to be happy for her, but a gnawing doubt had taken root in my mind. The turning point came when I noticed Emma was dressing differently. She had always been stylish, but now there was an extra effort, a deliberate attention to detail that hadn't been there before. She wore perfume I hadn't smelled on her in years, and her makeup was always impeccably done. One night, as she was getting ready to go out, I asked her where she was headed. "Oh, just a work meeting," she replied casually, avoiding my gaze. "Tom and I need to finalize some details for the fundraiser." I nodded, trying to keep my voice steady. "You seem to be spending a lot of time with Tom." Emma looked at me, her eyes hardening for a moment before she forced a smile. "It's just work, Jack. Don't be paranoid." But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was seriously wrong. I decided it was time to take matters into my own hands. I started paying closer attention to Emma's behavior. She was always careful with her phone, never leaving it unattended, and always taking it with her, even to the bathroom. It was a far cry from the days when we used to share everything, from our thoughts to our devices. One evening when Emma was in the shower, I saw my chance. Her phone was on the bedside table, unlocked. My heart pounded as I picked it up, my hands trembling. I felt a pang of guilt, but my need for answers overpowered it. I scrolled through her messages, my stomach dropping with each intimate exchange between Emma and Tom. There were messages filled with inside jokes, late-night confessions, and plans to meet up. But it was the photos that shattered me. Pictures of them together, laughing and holding hands, with a closeness that was painfully familiar, yet completely foreign. I felt like I was looking at a stranger's life, a life that had no place for me. It was like a punch to the gut, and I struggled to breathe as I printed out the incriminating evidence. That night, Emma came home with the same casual indifference, but I was ready. I confronted her, holding the printouts like a shield. "What's this, Emma?" I demanded, my voice shaking with a mix of anger and heartbreak. Emma's face went pale as she looked at the evidence. For a moment she seemed at a loss for words, but then her expression hardened. "Jack, it's not what you think," she started, but I could hear the guilt in her voice. "Don't lie to me!" I interrupted, my voice rising. "I've seen the messages, the photos. How long has this been going on?" Emma's shoulders sagged and tears welled up in her eyes. "It's been a few months," she admitted quietly. "I didn't mean for it to happen, Jack. It just did." Her words hit me like a sledgehammer. The woman I had loved, trusted, and built a life with had betrayed me. The depth of her infidelity was staggering, and I felt a mix of anger, betrayal, and a deep, aching sadness. The confrontation was raw and painful, and I realized that our marriage had been hanging by a thread, and now that thread had snapped. The days following Emma's confession were some of the hardest of my life. The raw wound of her betrayal festered with every interaction. I couldn't look at her without seeing the images of her and Tom, laughing and holding hands. The trust that had once been the bedrock of our relationship was now a chasm that seemed impossible to bridge. Emma continued to come home late, offering feeble excuses that only fueled my suspicions. She claimed she was working late, or out with friends, but the hollow explanations did little to quell the storm of doubt raging inside me. One night she came home smelling of Tom's cologne, and it took every ounce of self-control not to confront her again. I decided I needed a different approach. The direct confrontation had yielded nothing but pain, and I was desperate for clarity. I began to observe Emma more closely, noting the small details she thought I wouldn't notice. She was always on edge, glancing at her phone with a mixture of anxiety and anticipation. She never left it unattended, even taking it with her to the bathroom or to bed. One evening, an opportunity presented itself. Emma had gone to take a shower, and for the first time in weeks, she left her phone on the kitchen counter. My heart raced as I picked it up, my hands trembling with a mix of fear and determination. I quickly navigated to her messages, scrolling through the recent conversations. The messages between Emma and Tom were still there, filled with a level of intimacy that was both heartbreaking and infuriating. They spoke of their feelings, their stolen moments together, and their plans for the future. I felt a sickening knot in my stomach as I read their words, each one a dagger to my heart. But it wasn't just the messages that hurt. It was the realization that Emma had emotionally checked out of our marriage long before the affair had begun. I printed out the messages as evidence, knowing I would need them for the next steps. That evening, when Emma returned from her shower, I confronted her again, this time with the printouts in hand. "Emma," I said, my voice steady but filled with emotion, "we need to talk." She looked at the printouts in my hand, her face draining of color. "Jack, please," she began, but I held up my hand to stop her. "No more lies, Emma," I said, my voice cracking. "I know about the messages, about Tom. How long has this been going on?" Emma's shoulders slumped, and she sat down heavily at the kitchen table. "A few months," she admitted quietly. "I didn't want it to happen, Jack. I never meant to hurt you." Her words were like salt in the wound. "But you did hurt me, Emma. You destroyed everything we built together. Why? Was it something I did?" She shook her head, tears streaming down her face. "It's not about you, Jack. It's about me. I felt so lonely, so disconnected. Tom was just there." Her admission stung. "So you thought the solution was to have an affair? To betray me and our family?" Emma sobbed, covering her face with her hands. "I'm sorry, Jack. I never wanted it to go this far. I was just so unhappy." Her apologies felt hollow. The damage was done, and there was no taking it back. "We can't go on like this, Emma," I said quietly. "I can't trust you anymore." The words hung in the air, heavy with finality. Emma nodded, her sobs subsiding into quiet sniffles. "I understand," she whispered. I don't know what to do now." Neither did I. The path ahead seemed uncertain and fraught with pain. But one thing was clear. Our marriage could not continue as it had been. We needed to find a way to move forward, whether together or apart. The trust was gone, the love tainted by betrayal, and our future lay in the balance, waiting for us to decide its course. In the aftermath of our confrontation, the atmosphere at home became unbearable. Emma and I moved through the house like ghosts, barely acknowledging each other's presence. The children sensed the tension, and their innocent questions about why Mommy and Daddy were always sad tore at my heart. I knew I had to do something, not just for my sake, but for theirs. I decided to take a different approach. If confronting Emma directly wouldn't yield the truth, I needed to gather more evidence. I began observing her behavior even more closely. She was always meticulous with her phone, never leaving it unattended, which only fueled my suspicions further. It was clear she was hiding something, and I needed to find out what. One evening, after the children had gone to bed, Emma went to take a shower. I seized the moment. Her phone was on the nightstand, and for the first time in weeks, it was unlocked. My hands trembled as I picked it up and navigated to her messages. The intimate messages between her and Tom were still there, but there was more this time. Photos, plans for secret meetings, and even discussions about their feelings for each other. The final straw was a message from Tom that read, "I can't wait to see you tomorrow night. I'll make sure it's unforgettable." The pain and anger surged through me, but I knew I had to stay calm. I took screenshots of everything and emailed them to myself. This time, I was NVJTMT just confronting her. I was preparing for the next steps. That night, after Emma returned from her shower, I confronted her again, this time with the new evidence. "Emma, we need to talk," I said, my voice steady but filled with emotion. She looked at me, her face a mixture of fear and resignation. "What now, Jack?" she asked quietly. I handed her the printouts of the messages. "Explain these," I demanded. Emma's eyes widened as she looked at the printouts. Her face went pale, and she slumped onto the bed. "Jack, she began, but her voice trailed off. "How long has this been going on?" I asked, my voice cracking. "And don't lie to me this time." She took a deep breath and finally confessed. "It's been almost a year," she admitted, tears streaming down her face. "I never meant for it to go this far. I was just so unhappy and Tom was there. He listened to me, made me feel alive again," her words cut deep. "And what about me, Emma? What about our family? Did we mean so little to you that you could just throw it all away?" Emma sobbed, covering her face with her hands. "I'm sorry, Jack. I know I've hurt you. I know I've destroyed everything. I didn't mean to, but I did." The room was filled with the sound of her sobbing, and for a moment I felt a pang of pity. But the betrayal was too great, the wound too deep. "We can't go on like this," I said quietly. "I can't trust you anymore. I can't live like this." She looked up at me, her eyes filled with desperation. "What are you saying, Jack? Are you leaving me?" I took a deep breath, steadying myself. "I don't know, Emma. I need time to think. But one thing is clear. We can't keep pretending everything is okay. We need to figure out what comes next for the sake of the children and ourselves." Emma nodded, her shoulders shaking with sobs. "I understand," she whispered. "I'll do whatever it takes to make things right, Jack. Just tell me what to do." But I didn't have an answer for her. The path ahead was uncertain, and the future of our marriage hung in the balance. All I knew was that we couldn't continue living a lie. The trust was gone, the love tainted by betrayal, and our once happy home had become a battleground. It was time to make some hard decisions, and I had no idea where to begin. In the days that followed, the house felt like a war zone. Every glance, every word, was charged with the weight of our unspoken pain. Emma and I tried to maintain a semblance of normalcy for the children, but the cracks in our façade were evident. I could see the confusion and worry in their eyes, and it broke my heart. One evening, as I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, I realized that I couldn't continue like this. I needed to take control of my life, for my sake and for the children. Emma's betrayal had shattered my trust, but I had to find a way to move forward. Revenge was tempting, but it wouldn't bring peace. Instead, I decided to take a more calculated approach. The next day, I consulted with a divorce attorney. The meeting was sobering, but necessary. I explained the situation, and the attorney laid out my options. We discussed the evidence of Emma's infidelity, the potential impact on the divorce proceedings, and the best way to protect my interests and those of our children. I felt a sense of clarity beginning to form. That evening, I told Emma we needed to talk. We sat down in the living room, the tension between us palpable. "Emma," I began, my voice steady but firm, "I've spoken to a divorce attorney." Her eyes widened in shock. "Jack, no," she whispered, tears welling up. "Please, we can work this out." I shook my head. "We can't, Emma. The trust is gone. I can't live with this betrayal hanging over us. We need to do what's best for the children, and that means ending this marriage." Emma broke down, sobbing uncontrollably. "I'm so sorry, Jack. I never wanted this to happen. I still love you. Please, give me another chance." Her pleas tugged at my heart, but I knew what I had to do. "Emma, I can't. I need to move on, and so do you. I've already filed for divorce. I'm going to seek full custody of the children and a fair division of our assets." She looked devastated, but she nodded slowly. "I understand," she whispered. "I'll cooperate. I just want the best for the children." The following weeks were a blur of legal meetings and difficult conversations. I kept the evidence of Emma's affair private, only using it in court to strengthen my case. The divorce process was painful, but I remained focused on ensuring the best outcome for our children and myself. I didn't want to publicly humiliate Emma. My priority was to protect our children from further trauma. Through it all, I found strength in my role as a father. I spent as much time as possible with the children, reassuring them that no matter what happened between their mother and me, we both loved them dearly. I encouraged them to express their feelings and sought the help of a family therapist to guide us through this challenging time. Emma, for her part, seemed genuinely remorseful. She attended therapy sessions and made efforts to rebuild her relationship with the children. We managed to establish a civil co-parenting arrangement, focusing on the well-being of our children above all else. Despite the pain, I could see that she was trying to make amends. As the divorce proceedings neared their conclusion, I felt a mixture of sadness and relief. The life I had known for the past 20 years was ending, but I also felt a sense of liberation. I had chosen to prioritize my dignity and the well-being of my children over revenge or bitterness. On the day the divorce was finalized, I took a moment to reflect on the journey I had been through. The betrayal, the heartbreak, and the difficult decisions had all led to this point. I realized that while Emma's actions had shattered my trust, they had also pushed me to rediscover my own strength and resilience. That evening, I sat down with the children and explained to them that the divorce was final. I assured them that although their mother and I were no longer together, we both loved them deeply and would always be there for them. They took the news with a maturity that surprised me, and I felt a glimmer of hope for the future. As I lay in bed that night, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. The road ahead would still be challenging, but I was ready to face it. I had chosen a path that prioritized healing and growth, and I knew that, in time, I would find happiness again. Emma and I would move forward separately, bearing the scars of our fractured relationship. But I felt hopeful about the future as I focused on being the best father I could be and embracing the possibilities that lay ahead. In the months that followed the finalization of our divorce, life began to settle into a new normal. The initial tumult gave way to a quieter, more reflective period. I focused on creating a stable and nurturing environment for the children. Our home, though changed, began to feel like a place of healing and growth. Emma moved into an apartment nearby, and we established a co-parenting routine that allowed the children to spend time with both of us. It wasn't always easy, but we managed to put our differences aside for their sake. Despite everything, I could see that Emma was making a genuine effort to be a better mother, and that brought me some comfort. As I adjusted to my new life, I also found myself rediscovering old passions and exploring new interests. I took up photography, something I had always loved, but had set aside due to the demands of family and work. It became a therapeutic outlet for me, a way to see the world through a different lens and find beauty in the small moments. One afternoon, I took the children to the park. We spent hours playing, laughing, and enjoying each other's company. As I watched them run and play, I felt a profound sense of gratitude for their resilience and their ability to find joy, even in the midst of upheaval. They were my anchor, my reason for moving forward with hope. Emma and I maintained a cordial relationship, communicating openly about the children's needs and activities. It was a delicate balance, but it worked. There were moments of tension, moments when the old wounds threatened to reopen, but we both knew that our primary responsibility was to our children. We attended school events together, celebrated birthdays, and even managed a few family outings. These moments, though bittersweet, were necessary for our children's sense of security and continuity. One evening, as I was tucking the kids into bed, my youngest asked, "Daddy, are you happy now?" The question caught me off guard. I paused, looking into their innocent eyes, and realized that despite the pain and loss, I was starting to find a new kind of happiness. "I am, sweetheart," I replied, smiling. "It took some time, but I'm getting there. And having you and your siblings with me makes me very happy." As the children drifted off to sleep, I reflected on how far I had come. The journey had been arduous, filled with heartbreak and difficult decisions, but it had also been a journey of self-discovery and resilience. I had learned to prioritize my well-being and the well-being of my children, to let go of bitterness, and to embrace the possibility of a brighter future. One day, while browsing through an art gallery, I met someone who would unexpectedly change my life. Her name was Claire, an artist with a warm smile and a kind heart. We struck up a conversation about the photographs on display, and I found myself drawn to her genuine interest in life and art. Over the next few weeks, we continued to meet, sharing stories and experiences. Claire was understanding and patient, aware of my recent past and the challenges I faced. She didn't VGTMT rush anything, allowing our relationship to develop naturally. For the first time in a long while, I felt a spark of excitement and possibility. She brought a lightness to my life that had been missing, a reminder that it was okay to find joy again. As Claire and I grew closer, I introduced her to the children. They took to her immediately, and their laughter and acceptance gave me hope that this new chapter could be a happy one. Emma, too, was supportive, recognizing that our children VDJ/TM's well-being was enhanced by the presence of positive influences in their lives. Over time, Claire became a beloved part of our family. We created new memories together, blending our lives in a way that felt seamless and right. The pain of the past didn't VJTMT disappear, but it became a part of the tapestry of my life, woven into the story of who I was and who I was becoming. One evening, as we all sat around the dinner table, the children chatting animatedly about their day, Claire reached over and took my hand. Her touch was reassuring, a silent acknowledgement of the journey we had taken to reach this point. I looked around at my children, at Claire, and felt a deep sense of contentment. I had chosen to face betrayal with dignity and to prioritize healing over revenge. I had chosen to build a new life, one filled with love, resilience, and hope. The scars of the past would always be there, but they no longer defined me. Instead, they were reminders of my strength and the choices I had made to create a better future for myself and my children. As I looked into Claire's eyes, I knew that while the road ahead would still have its challenges, I was no longer walking it alone. With love, support, and a renewed sense of purpose, I was ready to embrace whatever the future held, confident that we could face it together.